Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's study session. Mr. Raines, you want to kick this off?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to present in the study session on a topic regarding the Pinal Regional Transportation Authority, also known around the county as the PRTA. And many may recall that the PRTA was established in 2015 by the Pinal County Board of Supervisors to coordinate multi-jurisdictional transportation planning and improvements. The group, in conjunction with with all of the municipalities in the county at that time, put together a plan that ultimately went to the voters, along with a taxing question to fund the projects. Ultimately, that was challenged and lost in appeal. And so for a number of years, the half-cent sales tax for these improvements were collected, and ultimately is in an escrow being managed now by Pinal County as they work through the various components of that appeal. We have Mayor McFarland, who has chaired the board for the last several years, so I suspect the mayor will be very interested in adding some points from the board's perspective. The PRTA is obviously a separate taxing district in Arizona, and following the court rulings, the government organizations elected to reconvene, get the board back together on a more active basis, and asked the municipalities to begin to establish on the development of a new plan. And for the last 2 years, we have been meeting from our technical advisory committee, which our Deputy Public Works Director, City Engineer Dwayne Itel, staffed as the chairman, to the city managers, to the various board members, which are comprised of, the majority are comprised of mayors throughout the county, have been meeting to discuss the concept of developing a new plan of improvements to present to the voters, as well as ask the voters to reconsider that tax. There were some recent decisions made on November the 12th, and really the purpose of this meeting tonight is to update the mayor and council on that. Stephen, if you can just scroll down a bit. Through that course of action of the past couple of years, there were 3 scenarios that ultimately were developed, and this was based on each entity developing a list of projects and submitting those through an application basis. The county team who took the lead on this actually studying those projects through an external consultant, an engineering firm, putting costs together, and as that process went on, we ultimately created 3 scenarios. I'm not really going to spend a lot of time on the scenarios because of the outcome, but each of those scenarios had impacts to each municipality in some form or fashion. In our case, the city of Casa Grande, the focus was on Burris Road, to build a north-south infrastructure, roadway infrastructure that would, in essence, focus on our industrial area, removing the traffic from our industrial area and on the west side of our community, and really moving it out of Pinal Avenue and various neighborhoods where truck traffic goes today. But as time went on, it became very clear to the group and potentially the board that ultimately the project was perhaps not properly timed. And there were some other elements, such as the potential of the Santan Valley incorporation and other taxing type questions, along with just the overall general cost of these improvements, that it became clear that the board should consider a 4th alternative, and that fourth alternative was to, in essence, suspend the process, essentially move in another direction. And so on November the 12th, and Stephen, you can continue to scroll, and you can go past these. These are actually the 3 scenarios. I know the council has seen these over the last several months, but the 4th scenario was in essence to suspend the program at this particular time and to potentially focus on an alternative for the future that would be more of a planning document to really begin to evaluate a regional connection, regional network that can take you from Apache Junction to Maricopa through the various cities and the like. And at that meeting, at that November 12th meeting, the board did approve unanimously to suspend the efforts that were being made and to evaluate, ask their various entities to evaluate this regional transportation framework concept. And I want to spend just a minute, then I'll let the mayor talk a little, perhaps about some of the other elements that he may see as part of this. But ultimately, these transportation framework studies are really futuristic type studies that are being done that look out 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. I think one of the things that, one of the elements that became quite clear to all of us involved in this last process is that looking at a 20-year window, the amount of revenues that would be generated in Pinal County over that time really could not meet the needs, or potentially not meet the needs for the county as a whole. And so the idea with these regional framework concepts is to really spend the time in studying what that may look like in the long term, and then ultimately coming back and developing a plan to allocate revenues, and a plan that ultimately could be brought back to the voters for their consideration. But I know from a staff's perspective, we are supportive of a plan of this nature. We believe that these regional networks are going to be necessary. We feel that today, particularly with the regional network to our west into Maricopa, the need for improving the transportation because of the amount of usage is growing. I think Maricopa, the city of Maricopa, sees the same value. Their focus has always been 347, obviously, and will likely be their priority. But again, building these connector roads that can get our residents through and around Pinal County are going to be key in the future. It's very much, this is really, if you think back to Maricopa and the plans that they've established on these 101 loops and the 303 loops, it was a longer range vision, not just a 20-year vision. But it becomes clear that in order to have what I consider to be viability at the voting place, we're going to need projects that are going to impact the residents in order to get their support on not only the plan, but also the tax. And so there are a couple of examples that I know that you have in your packets of these various studies and concepts. It's very likely that the county will take the lead in continuing the dialogue. If there is a time where they are asking for our participation and potential financial commitment, I will be coming back to the council to provide you with more information at that time. But Mr. Mayor, you obviously have been at the gavel for the last several years of this board, and may want to add some color to my report.
Sure, thanks, Larry. Yeah, it became pretty clear. There's a lot of complications involved. There's the Santan Incorporation, which is going to put a big strain on the city and our community if it does pass. It's about an $8 million hit to our annual budget, so something that the future council is going to have to deal with. So there's some of that. There's also the fact that really the municipalities came up with their own plans, but they weren't a regional plan. It was Skousen Road over here, it was 347 over there, it was Burris over here. I mean, everybody had the same issue, and it's not a regional transportation plan. So I think the TAC recommended, and Dwayne is the chairman of the TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee, that they would recommend that we suspend, not end, because there are some other issues that we have to stay as an organization. So the PRTA will remain. It's just going to be suspended and probably meet once a year, which would allow them to vote on new officers, take care of any business, or they'll meet as needed. So it's Lisa probably will stay on as the board representative for the city of Casa Grande. I'm sure they're going to have some new officer elections at the December meeting, where they'll identify some new officers for the board. But again, they're really not going to do anything. And so we are going to try and put this framework together, this network framework, which is going to probably be a combination of the municipal partners, the county, maybe some other stakeholders, maybe even like Pinal Partnership would be involved in it. So we'll actually then to begin to reconvene and start talking about, how do we build a regional transportation system? What does that look like 20 years, 30 years, 50 years out? Because if you think about it, the 101, the 202, the 303, all of those, it's taken them 40 years to build all that. So that didn't happen overnight. And but I think as a county and as a municipality in that county, we need to continue to look at that. We need to continue to try and have some focus on a regional system before it all becomes, like Phoenix, where everybody's grown together. And I think ultimately somewhere down the road, a certain amount of that's going to happen down in Pinal County. And we'd be better off to manage it now and try and build that transportation plan before we get there. So.
And Mr. Mayor, if I can, just from a hometown perspective, if you will, remind the council the importance of the PRTA. And if you think back to 2015, at that point in time, the city of Casa Grande had several capital improvement programs within our both our capital improvement program as well as our infrastructure improvement program, which is connected to our development impact fees. They included roads like Thornton Road. They included items like Courts and Interchange and the like. Many of those roads back in 2015, that infrastructure, which are significant dollar figures, ultimately were removed out of our development impact fee study because we anticipated that the PRTA were going to fund them. And so now we find ourselves today dealing with the scenario of the decision that was made by the courts, coupled with the fact that our newest interest has been Burris Road, and quite frankly, we would have had a reliance on the PRTA that is just not there at this point, obviously, because of the decision. So staff is aware of the fact that we are going to have to find financial mechanisms to fund some of these transportation corridors, and are working on a plan that will very likely be introduced as part of our fiscal year 26 budget.
Larry, because obviously we need to continue to work on that connectivity between us and Maricopa. And that's really, that's a workforce for Casa Grande. So if we can tap into that. And then also just the ease of getting between, and having an alternative even really to I-10. So, yeah, I mean, I-10 is not going to be a fun place for the next 4 years. So, it's going to take us 4 years to get that thing completed. And even when it gets completed, I'm not sure it'll be wide enough. So we'll see. Does anybody have any questions on this?
It was really intended just to be an update, and obviously there's going to be a passing of the baton, as you talked about just a minute ago, Mayor, with Mayor-elect Fitzgibbons beginning to serve on that board. So I wanted to make sure everybody had an update to that as we were moving into that time frame.
Yeah, we did pass the resolution, so it establishes the work group to identify the framework committee, and also suspends the operation of the PRTA. So, and that's where we're at. Yeah. Matt?
Just wanted to say thanks to Craig. Put a lot of time into that for a lot of years and kept us informed along the way. You did a good job of that. I appreciate it. And I can see where this maybe went a little sideways, but the framework county-wide is very important because that's where it's going to be. And if you look, I mean, 486, I didn't think it was going to pass as well as it did. I mean, it was pretty decisive, right?
It was very decisive.
As well as our own bonds that passed a year ago, 2 years ago.
Transportation.
Is all transportation-based. So this is very important to our citizens, our county. So I'm glad that it's still going, but at least if we see a plan, and maybe it'll be, I don't want to say unbiased, but more of a regional plan, right? But we want stuff for our city too, just like everybody else wants it. So, and I think an important thing to think about too is I've always asked Craig is, where does most of the funding come from in this? And I think we know the answer to that. A lot of it comes from right here in Casa Grande. So, anyway, I hope that the regional plan gets better, and it's important, Larry and Craig, good work of, or a good point of the 101, 202, which we all have used, you know. And it was always hard for me to, like with the county tax, but you know, we don't drive only on Casa Grande roads. We drive on everybody else's roads, the county roads. So it's important to know that, and it helps us economically, of course. So anyway, but I just want to say thanks, Craig, because I know you spent many, many hours working on this.
Yeah, hundreds of hours, yeah. So it's a bit frustrating for me, but I think it's probably the right thing to do is to step back, kind of reevaluate, and remind everybody what the job at hand is, which is, you know, a regional plan, not local roads, so.
And I agree. I mean, thank you, you know, because you're right. I know you were pushing for this and worked so hard, but then took a step back and said, okay, what's really happening here? So, and it was good to see some of the other cities agreed in the end. So, but hopefully we can come up with something in the future.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Larry.
Yes, sir.
We'll stand adjourned until 7 o'clock. We'll start the regular council meeting.